Cool, thank you. So Tom's session was interesting, huh? Talking about AI and everything. Well, what I'm hoping to do today is give you a little bit of an overview of what it means to design for voice, as well as give you a little bit of an insight into why we think voice will be important and is important now. Actually, I think Tom did a really good job at explaining, the history behind AI, and voice has been around for a long time. I mean, we've been speaking for millions of years, right? But voice has been around for a long time in technology, but it's only become mainstream today thanks to all the advancements in AI, machine learning, and the processing power. So that huge computer that was in the room now is, now a watch is twice as powerful. Think of what a huge room of servers is able to do. So we've seen that every 10 years or so, we've kind of embraced a new interface. And, I'm not here to tell you that it's going to replace the old interfaces, but we think that now in the next 10 years, we're going to grow into this new interface, which is the voice interface. We started with the character mode, right? Just a terminal. Then we moved on to GUIs and Windows. Then the web came about, and all of that was mobile. And voice has its own place where you want to express very specific intentions, and you don't want to have to faff about with getting to that specific outcome. And I'll give you some examples about that. By the way, I just completely forgot to introduce myself. So my name is Andrea, and I work for Amazon. And what I do usually is work with developers. So I tell them how to build voice apps, which we call skills. And I kind of took the design part and put it for today's presentation. Hopefully will give you some insights into what it means to design for voice. So just a hand of who has an Alexa device at home, okay? And who has built a skill already, an Alexa skill? Okay, cool. So a couple examples of, going back to the topic, a couple examples of where voice shines. Adding a to-do is very convenient via voice, because the other way of doing it in a modern way, right, is kind of long. I have to find my phone, which sometimes is not with me. Then I have to open the phone, write the to-do item, right, find the right app, et cetera, et cetera. Or I could just say, Alexa, add book flight to my to-do list. And Alexa is surprisingly accurate in this instance. Then turning off the lights as well, right? Who has smart home devices at home? Yeah? The great thing about smart home is you can control everything from your phone. The annoying thing about smart home is every device that you have has its own app and its own design, which is beautiful, but people have to learn different designs for different apps. And the same amount of extra work required to get to that outcome of turning on a light requires all those steps that we had for the to-do list. So, opening the phone, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The old way, just getting up, I won't do it now, but turning off the lights. But even here, there is a use case for voice, because imagine you're at home, you're in your bed, under the covers, you're about to start a movie, and you realize you left the bathroom light on. Wouldn't it just be awesome to just say, Alexa, turn off the bathroom light? And it happens. And it's also accurate on that. Last example, and then we'll get more into the practical things, is Ocado. I don't know if any of you are customers of Ocado or have tried it in the past, but I tried to compare the two experiences from my phone and from my Alexa. So from my phone, I had to open the phone, right? I had to open the app, which is in a little folder in the second part of my home screen, which is always the messiest part. Then I had to open the app, type in what I wanted, which was tuna, find the right one, click on it, and add it to my trolley. I mean, it was a great experience, but I didn't even put the loading screen on here, but it did take 30 to 40 seconds. And then I just asked Ocado to add tuna to my trolley. And the way that they built the skill, and this is something that we're going to talk about as well, is they built it so as to reduce friction, and rather than have to list out 10 different types of tuna, it just proactively added to the trolley a type of tuna that I've bought before and asked me if it was okay. Moving on, I want to explain the difference between the devices themselves and Alexa. How many of you were aware of the big announcements that we did a couple weeks ago? So Amazon, well, we went a little crazy with all the announcements, and I think we announced, 25 to 70. So we announced like 70 new things, of which a bunch of products. Some of them are here, like the Echo Amp, which is an Alexa-enabled amplifier for your sound system. The new Dot, the Echo Sub for more powerful basses, the smart plug, the Echo Auto, which I'll talk about in a little bit. So basically a little Alexa device for your dash cam, for your dash, and the Echo Input, which has no speakers, but you connect it to your sound system, and maybe when you want to have voice enablement all around the house without having a dedicated device with speakers, you can just put these all over and it connects with line-in. And my personal favorite is the Alexa Microwave, which was, I think, the star of the show. And imagine having. So I don't know about you. Hopefully, are there any microwave UX designers here? No? I'd like to talk to you and figure out why you make it so hard to do things. So imagine just being able to pop in a chicken thigh in the microwave and say, Alexa, defrost one chicken thigh, and it happens. You don't have to worry about what the optimal power is for defrosting, how to activate the defrost session, which I haven't, the defrost setting, which I haven't been able to do on my microwave. And it's just going to be so much more user-friendly. So I'm not here to tell you about the devices, also because we're not the only ones making devices, because Alexa is not specific or installed to a specific device. The devices are Alexa-enabled, and by that I mean they use the Alexa voice service, which is a library that allows any device that has a Wi-Fi chip and a microphone to be able to connect to the Alexa service, right? So the Alexa service is up there in the clouds, and any device can contact it, meaning that all of your experiences are not tethered to a specific device, and any device you use that's linked to your account has the same experience. Which also means that other manufacturers can build Alexa devices. So things like the General Electric round lamp that you see, the Sonos speaker is now Alexa-enabled. Some phones are becoming Alexa-enabled. We have also people making equivalent of the Echo Dots like Anchor. A bunch of partners are adding Alexa to their products, which means that having to worry about being close to that Alexa device that you have in your room is becoming less and less important. And on the other side is, once you have all of those touch points, what kind of experience can you make? And this is where everyone here comes in, right? This is, how can you extend what people can do with Alexa? And that's why we call them skills, because really we're teaching Alexa new things. But it's hard to make good skills. And I know Tom was referencing to David's talk, and I've seen that one before. And sometimes if a skill isn't well built and doesn't account for that lack of confidence and doesn't account for making sure that the user is super clear on what needs to be said or what can be said, then it leads to a frustrating experience. But before we get into that, I just want to give you a little bit of an insight as to how things work on behind the scenes. So how does Alexa work? Super high overview, don't worry, I won't get into technical details, but when we speak to one of the devices, what we produce with our organs is noise, right? To us, it's voice, and it sounds beautiful and it makes sense. To a machine, it's just pure waveforms. So some people think, oh, it's always listening. The device itself, the only thing that the physical device can do without connecting is figuring out whether you've said Alexa. And as soon as it figures out that you've said Alexa, so it keeps a little buffer, and as soon as it hears Alexa and it matches that sound signature, then it activates and it starts sending everything else after until a pause is heard and then parses it, right? So that's where we get into the iconic cloud figure. And there, two things happen. So once that audio stream is sent up, two things need to happen. First is going from that random noise, that mumbo jumbo, to text. Because text can be understood, can be parsed, can be matched. And then going from that text, which can have various meanings, to understanding, to intention. What does the user actually want to do, and therefore what do we have to do to make it happen? But the first step is already pretty challenging, right? The automatic speech recognition, going from noise to text. For example, what are all the meanings of 4 miles? There's 4 miles, right? There's 4 miles, the musician. Or there's form isles, islands. Or, there's 4 miles. Or if you really want to stretch it and you say it quickly, 4 miles, 4 my aisles, right? So that has to be done in a split second, and we have to figure out what the user said, even though the noise that came in is exactly the same. Then we have to figure out what does the user want to do. So once that's figured out, a request is sent to the skill backend with not what the user said, but with what the intention of the user is. And as developers, you specify. I know that you're not developers, but some of you have built skills. But if you do build a skill, and by the way, you don't need to be a developer to build one, you specify what intentions you can support. And therefore, Alexa will trigger a specific intention, and you handle it however you want. All right. Going back to more of the design side. First, how many skills do you think there are in the world? Random guesses. Random numbers. 5,000, 50,000, a million, 100. All of them are here. No. So there's 50,000. Good job. In the world, more than 50,000 now, and most of them are in the U.S. by the way. So the reason I'm telling you that is because I don't want that 50,000 to put you off from building a skill. I think it's really the right time to start building skills especially here in the UK. But skills are experiences that you expose to users and to Alexa, but you should conceptually think them as skills, but practically they are apps, right? But differently from apps, skills, the way that you access skills is you don't download them onto your device and you don't install them. There's no lag between wanting to use a skill and being able to use it. And the reason is, as I said earlier, everything's at the account level. So any device you use contacts the same account content. Therefore, you know how with apps you have to kind of market them in a way that entices users to click a button, to go to the App Store, to download the app, to use it. With voice, it's just a sentence. You just give them the sentence that will open it if they already have it, or prompt to enable it on their account if they don't have it already. Like for example, Alexa, ask Uber for a ride. And if users don't have Uber enabled, Alexa will say, would you like to enable the Uber skill? Yes, okay, boom. And they have access. So voice, so the utterance, the voice prompt that you communicate also becomes the way that users interact, and a very fast bridge to wanting to use something and being able to use it. There's also been, we've observed that usage is quite interesting, right? And very dependent on the type of devices that have been available so far. So as a smart speaker, you would expect them to be in the living room and in the kitchen, right? But now we have the Echo Spot, and now the bedroom is also becoming a popular spot to have, to control your night scenes. So you can say, Alexa, good night, and everything turns off, and the blinds go down, or whatever you want. But other use cases are coming, and the reason I tell you that is so you can start thinking about what good use cases could be done in these new contexts. For example, cars. It takes a while to go from an idea to a final car, and that's why we've announced that Alexa's coming to cars, but it'll take a couple of years for various manufacturers like BMW and Ford, Toyota, et cetera, to add the Alexa to the cars. But imagine how much of a great context and perfect use case for voice a car is, right? You have both your hands busy on the wheel, and taking them off the wheel is dangerous, even just to press buttons. You have to keep your eyes on the road, so even looking at things is potentially dangerous. And you want to be able to speak, or you want to be able to communicate, or or be entertained, or get things done, or get information without having to use your eyes or your hands. So I think cars will definitely be a really big use case for voice. And when you do build skills or when you design skills, keep in mind that skills can be used in different contexts, including the car. A couple things that we've been doing, just as an update for voice. So up until recently, skills were free. You had to build a skill and it was free. Now, we've added in-skill purchasing and monetization and also Amazon Pay support. So even with voice, users can make purchases, like Virgin Trains, for example. You can book a ticket and pay for it without having to open any phone or any tablet or any computer. I'm actually going to skip ahead a couple things, because I want to focus more on the design stuff. When should you choose voice? And I think Tom made a good point about, AI is sometimes a solution looking for a problem, right? I think it's also a matter of what types of experience you try to transpose to voice, because not everything shines with voice, right? Our voice and using our voice is very effective in communicating precise instructions. For example, I can say, get me a British Airways flight leaving tomorrow morning for less than 200 pounds from Munich or from London to Munich, right? All of those instructions are things that would take various flows of a user interface to do. But what if you want to get a huge amount of results back? What if you want to skim through images? What if you want to skim through options? There's tons of use cases where voice doesn't shine. And you have to be aware of that when you do design voice experiences. It's not just a matter of, okay, our product, we have the app, it's working great, but now we want to have an Alexa app or an Alexa skill. Let's just copy and paste all the functionality and put it and make it voice enabled. That's the best way to make a terrible experience. Because some things just won't work well, right? So 3 guidelines to help choose what to add to voice is that the voice experience itself should be easier, faster, and more natural to do with voice than with the current way of doing it. It may seem obvious, but you'd be surprised at how many people don't heed this. So for example, if I were to make Microsoft Excel on voice, would that be a good or a bad idea? Bad, yes, correct. You'd have to be like a chess grandmaster to be able to use the skill. You have to equals B4 times B5 divided by C5, right? Anyways, so don't do this, but it's not just the idea itself. So finding a good use case definitely is 50%, or I would say even less, is 40% of the problem, or 40% of the way there. The other 60% is how do you implement it, right? How do you implement something so that it doesn't become harder, slower, and less natural to use? And the way that you do that is to remove that friction, because that friction that I was talking about earlier is what makes voice shine. Because we naturally express our thoughts in a quiet voice in our head. We have thoughts, and the most natural way that we have to express those thoughts, since we've been doing it since we were born, and it's part of our instinct from millions of years ago, is to communicate it. We are used to nowadays to communicate it with and transposing it to a keyboard, to typing, and to a mouse, which is like a plastic thing that then translates to a different axis, and going like this actually goes like this, and then going like this actually goes like that, right? It's natural to us now, but children today who are used to using voice find it more natural to use voice than the normal interface. I have my colleague who has a daughter who has learned to use Alexa to play specific songs, and when they're in the car, she asks Alexa to replay a song that's on the radio. And unfortunately, that car is not Alexa enabled yet, but it gives you an insight as to how much they prefer to speak naturally rather than find the right button to do something. And going back to implementation, even a good idea can be done badly. If we go back to the Akkad example, right? if instead of being able to say, Alexa, ask Ocado to add tuna to my trolley, and then have it say, okay, to something like, oh, welcome to Ocado. There are 20 types of tuna. Type number 1 is essential Waitrose tuna. Type number 2 is whatever, and it lists you all 20 types. And then it asks you, what do you want to do? Type number 5? Okay, I've added type number 5. Blah, 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 blah. That's not the right way to implement a good idea. So keep things short. The other good way is something that anyone can do, even if you're not technical, and it's to start with people and not with computers. Anyone from the BBC here? No? Well, this is from the BBC, and they wrote a very interesting series of blog articles about prototyping for voice. bit.ly/BBC-VUI, but if you search for BBC prototyping for voice, you'll definitely find them. And what you have here is the BBC research and development team brainstorming a skill. And the way that they're doing it is the person on the left is speaking to an unplugged, non-functioning device. And the people on the right are the Alexa brains, right? They're trying to find out what to say back based on what they thought the user would have said, what they thought the user wanted to express. And in between, there's a divider to avoid human communication of gestures, of emotions, right? And all they're using paper, Post-it notes, flows, and anyone can do that. You don't have to code. Actually, coding and starting from the technical side is the worst way to start, because what you want to do really at the end of the day to have a good skill is to have a good conversation with a user, right? A good skill is a good conversation. So we actually did this ourselves at Mobile UX London. Anyone came to this session in London at our Shoreditch office? I met someone, yeah. I met someone at the entrance who also came here. And we had them, for a whole day, we had a hackathon, a design hackathon. When I tell that to developers, they're always like, that's not a hackathon. But anyways, a design hackathon. And they identified user stories, personas. They prototyped the skill. At the end of the day, we said, you can present however you want. You don't need to make a skill. Just, even just play it back and forth. And so users decided to impersonate the device and prototype the skill that way. And that's perfectly fine. It's a great way to start making, to build for voice, because at the end of the day, we are just replicating a human conversation. So a couple best practices. The first one is choose your invocation name carefully. I was saying earlier how your utterance, the invocation, right? The way that you use a skill, the sentence that you have to say, it kind of becomes your installation, your enablement, your entry point for any user to use your skill. What you have to consider, though, is that there's various ways there's a limited amount of ways that users can use that phrase or that invocation name. So users can say, Alexa, open your skill name. Alexa, tell or ask that skill name to do something. Or Alexa, do something using or with that skill name, right? So you can say, Alexa, open Uber. Alexa, ask Uber for a ride. Or Alexa, tell Uber to get me a ride. Or Alexa, get me a ride using Uber, or get me a ride with Uber. And then we also have Alexa Uber, which for Uber doesn't work very well. But if you have an invocation name that's kind of phrase-like, that can work well. Like, for example, there's a really good skill called Find My Phone, which whenever you lose your phone, you can just say, Alexa, find my phone. And given that it works, it'll trigger the skill called Find My Phone. And the invocation name doesn't have to be the same as the skill name. But it's what users will have to say to start your skill. Then something that you should also handle with voice is, unlike user interfaces where you have forms and you kind of guide the user through everything they need to do, right? And it turns red when you get it wrong, and then you give them a hint on what they have to do. With voice and with a normal conversation, things are a lot more less deterministic. So if I tell you where would you like to go, every one of you would give me a different answer, and in that answer would give me a different amount of information. So different atoms of information, right? Some of you can just say, I want to go somewhere sunny. Or someone would say, I want to go from London to Manchester. Or someone would want to say, I want to go from London to Manchester, leaving tomorrow morning, blah, 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 blah. With voice, currently, with the technology that we have for skill builders, you can make the conversation automatically adapt to how much information is incoming. So if you have less information required, so less than enough information required to satisfy a specific intent, you can follow up and say, okay, when or what day do you want to leave? But if the user instead gives you more information than is necessary, you can just skip the follow-up questions and not have it be like a phone system that just gets really annoying because you already know what you want to do, but you have to go through all the steps anyways, right? Which is what you don't usually have with a person. If you talk to a tour guide or you talk to a travel agency, you can just kind of express yourself however you want and things happen. The other thing is to handle corrections from the user. And we have various built-in intents like stop, cancel, go home intents. And stop intent is usually advised to just quit the skill, but cancel intent can be used more contextually. So maybe you don't want to quit the skill if you say cancel, but you might want to just cancel that specific addition to the cart or that specific order that you just placed, just to be flexible. The other thing is to be brief. I'm breaking my own rule here, just going on and talking, but there's a limited amount of information that users can absorb if you overload them without any sort of pause for them to absorb. So, for example, your final order is 1 large pizza, correct? Yes, no, etc. Versus, so I will now recap what you ordered. You ordered 1 large pizza. Please say yes if you want to confirm this order or say no to change it. You can also add our world-famous cheesy mozzarella sticks for £2 or a milkshake for £1. Thank you for choosing Uber Pizza. Check out our Facebook page at uberpizza.co.uk/Facebook. Leave a like. Right? Last thing you remember is leave a like. Where? You don't even remember the URL. What were the menu items? How much were they? What was my order? I forgot. So don't do this. Don't just paste in what you have in your website, because even though it may work wonderfully on your website, people can't absorb this much information at once, all in one go. The other thing is present definitive choices. So you do have flexibility on kind of manipulating how Alexa pronounces things if you want. There's a built-in text-to-speech engine which works quite well, but if you want, you have something called SSML, Speech Synthesis Markup Language. It's kind of like an HTML that you put around words that tells it to interpret a word in a specific way, either to override the pronunciation, or to speed it up, or to put emphasis, or to lower the pitch, or to raise the volume. You have a bunch of flexibility if you want, but sometimes you want to avoid having to manually tweak things and be unambiguous in how you ask things, right? Because would you like some cheese or pepperoni pizza? Yes, I'd love some, right? Versus we have cheese or pepperoni, which one do you want? It's fine to say both, but not yes. Yes doesn't mean anything in the context of asking users what type of pizza they want, right? So the things that you write down, make sure that they're not ambiguous and don't rely on a specific way of saying them. The other thing that you should keep in mind, and this is kind of like, I think, the foundation of everything, of course, is to write for the ears and not the eyes. So our eyes are great. Again, I'm not here to tell you that everything else that you've learned you should throw away. I'm the first, number one fan of these things. I use apps on a daily basis. But our eyes are different from our ears. Our eyes love patterns. They love when things are in order. They love when things repeat themselves so that we don't have to keep absorbing new things, right? So the search results, they follow the same font, they follow the same color, the same size, so I can just focus on the content. I can just focus on what changed, right? I don't have to take in a new, completely different graphic, a new, completely different font size, and kind of find what I want to find. So, we kind of expect uniformity. Our ears expect variety, and they hate hearing the same thing twice. They hate hearing the same thing twice. They hate hearing the same thing twice. So even in your skill responses, whereas on a website, it's perfectly fine to have a static string that you send back for a specific confirmation or for a specific question. With voice, do remember that people are speaking to you. They are speaking to you and you are speaking back to them. And the fastest way to become an annoying robot is to say the exact same thing back every single time. So make sure that what you say back is varied. Have a list of possible responses and pick one at random. And finishing up, also think multimodal. So for all of you who have visual experience, you're in luck. We're not trying to abolish the screen, as I was saying. And you may think it's counterintuitive. Hey, you've been going on about voice. Why are you now talking about multimodal and screens and everything? And the reason is, of course, we think voice will become one of the foundational interfaces, but we have 5 senses. Why not use them, right? So why not be able to present information if you want? Maybe a user is looking to book a trip. Why not show them what possible destinations they have or what possible prices there are for different airline companies? We think that the future will not just be voice only, it'll be voice first for many things. But if you remember, at the first graph that I showed you, if you remember, all of these interfaces are still here today, right? No matter that we've advanced, developers still use the character mode. We still use GUIs all the time. So everything will still be used. It's just a matter of adding voice as a foundation with which users can interact if they want to. And just to close, I just want to share with you some other guidelines and link you to the Alexa design guide. So if you are interested in building for voice and you want to get started, then especially for a UX designer, this would be the perfect place to start. Alexa.design/guide. And it's a living document that we keep updating that goes through the whole process from inception to prototyping to how do you optimize your responses, how do you optimize the prompts, how do you make clear questions, and covers all of those best practices that I talked about as well as others. And with that, I'm out of time, so thank you very much.
Thank you, Andrea.